All right, now we're recording. I'm going to change our presenter over. So today we have a webinar from Kurt Baranowski, who is an environmental scientist at EPA, and he will be presenting on the Climate Resilience Evaluation and Awareness Tool. And with that, I will switch our controls over.
Hey, Kristen, this is Kurt. Sorry, is there something specific that I need to do on my end to make sure that folks
No,
see my screen?
No, I am sending it to you right now.
Okay. Oh, I see it.
There you go. So now you should be the presenter.
Show my screen. You got it. Well, hopefully folks can see my screen. Let me minimize this.
Yes.
And what you should see in front of you is Climate Ready Water Utilities homepage. Is that correct?
Yes, we're able to see that.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure before I get going. So thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to present to you today. My name's Kurt Baranowski. I work at EPA's Office of Water, and I lead up our Climate Ready Water Utilities Initiative. And before I give you an overview of our Climate Resilience Evaluation Awareness Tool, which we call CREATE, I want to give you a little background on the initiative, what it's about, what we do, and also I want to keep this really informal. So if you have any questions, just stop me. I'm happy to answer them along the way. Hopefully I'll stop at logical points so that you can ask me questions. And certainly after this call, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I'll provide you with my contact information at the end of this presentation. So with the Climate Ready Water Utilities Initiative, what we are doing is taking existing climate science data and we're putting it into usable formats for drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater utilities so they can think through what their futures might look like and then plan accordingly. So the initiative is based all on adaptation. We're not going down the road of looking at mitigation and how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Certainly with the implementation of some adaptive measures that you may put in place in order to combat climate impact, you may get some benefit of greenhouse gas reduction, but that's not the intent of the initiative. Everything that we've done under the CREW umbrella, which that's the acronym for Climate Ready Water Utilities, we've done in coordination with many partners. So drinking water and wastewater utilities, of course, water sector associations, states, climate science experts across the federal government as well as in the private sector. And everything that we've done, too, is completely transparent. So nothing has been done in the black box, and any assumptions that we make about climate data is all out there for the world to see. And I'll explain that in a bit more as I kind of move through our tools and resources. So that gives you an idea of what the initiative is trying to do. And so one of the things that I thought would be useful for you folks to see first is, now this doesn't have any climate data in it, but we have a coastal storm surge scenario map up on EPA's website. It's actually developed in coordination with NOAA's National Hurricane Center. And we have a whole bunch of data in here. So we have NOAA's sea, lake, overland surge from hurricanes model. So it's sort of a worst case scenario of a storm surge for coastal communities. We've also layered FEMA's 100-year and 500-year floodplains, and then we've also worked with National Hurricane Center again to provide hurricane strike data. What we are talking about the potential to add a sea level rise component either to this map or another map that I'll show you in a minute. But just kind of basically what I want to show you here is you can see all the different types of data that's in front of you. and you can type into the toolbar anything that you like. You can type in a zip code, an address, whatever it might be, and you'll, in this case, come into South Amboy, New Jersey, which is a coastal community in New Jersey. And this sometimes takes a little time to render because there's a lot of data running behind it. But you'll start to see some of the data that we have within the map. These red zones that you're seeing here in front of you are worst case storm surge for this area of the coast of New Jersey. So since you're coastal communities, I thought this would be something that you'd be interested in seeing, and certainly feel free to take a good look at it, use it. I think it's a great planning tool. You can see the map continuing to render to pull in even more and more data as it sits here steady. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So it takes a little bit of time, but it's, I think, a very helpful and resourceful map. So moving forward, as I had mentioned earlier, I'm going to provide you with an overview, where the majority of this webinar will be an overview of CREATE. But we are now, we've just released the 3rd version of the tool, which is a web-based application up on EPA's website. The previous versions were downloadable files, or yeah, I guess that's what you call it, a downloadable tool that you would use. You click on it and launch it, and it had a lot of great information in it. It probably wasn't the most user-friendly tool, but it did a great job, and the 2nd version of it provided a tremendous amount of data related to climate change futures. And one of the things that we were hearing from our stakeholder groups is, you know, hey, yeah, we're interested in doing a climate assessment, but we're really interested in seeing the climate data. And so we developed this map, which I'll run through for you in a bit. So it's the same climate data that's in CREATE that's up on this web page. And everything that I'm explaining to you today can be accessed right off of the Climate Ready Water Utilities homepage, and I'll provide that link to you later on too. All of the climate data that we use for any of our tools is based on the 2014 Global Change Research Program data. All the assumptions that we make about the data are incorporated into the methodology for CREATE, which I'll show you folks later on. But you know, most folks don't, or I shouldn't say that they don't care, but they just want to kind of see what their futures might look like. So you can see the different tabs that we have up here for temperature, precip, storms, extreme heat, sea level rise. So I'll just click on temperature so you can see basically what we give here. So for 2 different time periods, we provide 3 different scenarios for users. So we're not giving people or users one number to plan to. We're giving folks a range of potential futures to think about and plan to. So in this case, again, we can type in zip code. I'll use the same one I used before. And when you click on this grid cell, you can see the climate data here for temperature, for our change in average annual temperature for the 2 different time periods, and for 3 different scenarios. So again, same exact data that's in CREATE, that's built in across this tool. So again, a very useful tool, a tool that can be used by anybody, anywhere, anytime. It doesn't have to be a water utility or anybody in the water sector. So again, as you look at these tools, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me or ask me any questions. The next resource that I want to tell you about is our adaptation case study and information exchange. And this came about as a result of some assessments, individual utility assessments that we've done across the U.S. as well as different working groups that we've had. People were interested in sharing their stories about how they looked at climate, what they were concerned about, and what they were doing. So last year, or I should say over the period of the last 3 years, EPA supported about 30 different individual utility assessments, and we have a number of the case studies here up on EPA's website, so I can just click on this one here, which is San Diego, California. You can see the type of system, some of their concerns, and then you can click on the more information button where you get a rundown of the actual story of what San Diego looked at and what they're addressing. So again, I think a useful tool, and you can also over here to the left where I have the cursor, come into EPA's website and share your story. So what we're hoping to encourage is folks working with each other, sharing information so that they can learn from one another about how they're addressing different climate impacts at their utilities, that hopefully maybe some larger utilities can share information with some smaller utilities and help them to become more climate ready. I'm not going to go through each one of these tabs, but I am going to just click on this last tab, as well as on the CREW homepage and probably built into all of our tools. We developed a number of videos with some of the individual assessment folks that we worked with to tell their stories. So I think these videos really resonate within the water sector. It's the story being told by the utility. This is not an EPA-centric video. It's really the story of the utility in a particular area, talking about how they assess for climate impact and what they're doing to kind of move forward. So again, if you're interested in those, they're there for you to take a look at. One of the, excuse me, one of the other tools that I didn't pull up in front of you, because it's in a PDF format that sort of works like a website. It's called our Adaptation Strategies Guide. So the connect between our adaptation case study map as well as our Adaptation Strategies Guide is strong, in the sense of what the Adaptation Strategies Guide does is it provides users, readers, with information about climate impact in their particular region of the U.S. and then points them to stories and case studies of what other utilities have done in relation to climate impact. So we are working towards moving the Adaptation Strategies Guide over to a web-based format, and when we do, that tool as well as the map that you see here in front of you will be linked very nicely and work interactively. So we hope to have that done within the next, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. Okay, so this is the last tool that I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions before I get into Create. This is our Extreme Events Workshop Planner. This was built, again, at the request of water sector partners. What it does is it helps. So you've gone through and you used all these tools. You've used the storm surge tool, you've used the climate projection tool, you went into the Adaptation Strategies Guide, and you've learned what other utilities may have done that are similar to your utility, and now you think to yourself, well, what do I need to do next? I need to, not only pull the people that are in the know at my utility and in my community, but maybe some other subject matter expertise to better think about how do I become climate ready. And so what we did was we built a tool, a web-based tool, to help anyone, whether it's a utility, a community, actually put together a workshop around climate readiness. So it has a lot of great features in it. It allows you to, of course, capture people's names and build agendas and send out email through this process. All you have to do is come into EPA's website, register for it once, and you can start to use it. I'm not going to go into great detail on this tool, but again, I think it is a useful tool. You can kind of see a nice overview of what the tool does for you here in front of you. It prepares a report, and then it helps you with action steps for planning in the future. And logically, after kind of pulling all these people together and better understanding what your climate impact is and what you may want to do at your utility, the next step would be to actually conduct the full-on climate risk assessment, looking at climate data and trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I adapt to what my futures might look like? And that's where we start going into Create. So before I do that, I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions from folks about any of that stuff. Happy to answer that now or later. And I can't see the chat. Let me take a look at that just to make sure there isn't anything in the chat. Okay, good. All right, so I'll jump into Create. And so when you come into EPA's website, what you need to do is register for the tool. And what the tool is a climate risk assessment tool for water sector utilities. And so if you're a new user, you click on the button to the right, and you'll see this form that you have to fill out that comes to me. I approve it, and then you're free to use the tool. But what I will do is actually log in. So this is what you would see after you have your username and password. You log in, and since I'm already a user, this is the first page that you would see, which is either to build an analysis, import an existing analysis, or go into some of the analysis files that you've already developed and finalize them. If you come into the tool for the very first time, this is what you see, which is, hey, how do I get started? One of the nice things within the tool is there's a lot of help. So you can kind of see a video here that gives you an overview of the tool. Up in the help menu, there's our methodology guide, which that is a kind of very detailed document on not only how we develop the tool, but the climate science data in the tool. It goes into the economics, or economic data within the tool. There's a glossary of terms in case folks kind of get confused by anything that we use in the tool. Access to the videos, again, not the videos that I talked about before, but the actual videos that are built into the tool. And then I'll show you some of the other sort of help and features that are built into the tool. So I'm going to open up a file that I've already worked on. And you'll see over to the left 5 different modules. So what you do is you are prompted to walk through this tool step by step. As I said, there's help along the way. And I think it's a very intuitive and easy tool for any user to walk through. So the first thing that you're asked for is just to identify who you are, your ex-utility and whatever location. And then it maps you out here, which is nice. So that in this case, I think I picked a utility in New Hampshire. So hopefully it's mapping properly, and I think that it is. And then from that step, you can learn some of the climate change basics about your region of the country. So this directly links back into the adaptation strategies guide. It's the 8 different climate regions set up by the Global Change Research Program. And it just gives you some basic information about what's going to happen in the future, the type of challenges that you're going to be looking at, and then if you want more detail, you can actually go into the Global Change Research Program report, but I'm not going to go into that. And from there, you identify what you're concerned with. You can choose any of the different concerns that we supply here within the tool, or you can add a custom concern. Maybe we didn't hit the mark for what you're interested in, but lots of flexibility built within the tool to help users. And even here, where if you don't understand what one of these icons may be, there are I buttons here to kind of give you some background on what each one of them means. So just some basic examples here. And from there, you get a report. And one of the things that we heard from our utility folks is, well, you know, we're walking through this tool and we want to kind of know what we're getting as we move along the way. And so we worked with a lot of the PR and outreach folks at different utilities to develop the different types of reports. So they're all one-page reports that folks would get as they move through the tool. So here's just some basics on climate impact for this particular utility based on the area of the country that they're located in. And so from climate awareness, we move into scenario development. And we provide a primer here for folks to better understand what you're getting into prior to jumping into the tool. Again, the video to help better understand this module. And so what you start to do here is identify your threats. Again, you can't see it here because I've already developed this analysis file, but you can add your own threat if you so choose to do so. These are provided threats within the tool. In this case, I was looking at ecosystem changes. Here's a good example of a tip that we provide. So, you know, the term baseline scenario may be foreign to some folks, so we want to make sure that we identified it for them properly. And it's kind of, okay, what's the state of your current knowledge about climate at your utility as we compare it to what the future might look like. So your baseline is sort of today, and then, okay, we're going to look at the future. So here's the historic data that we provide, excuse me, in the tool as it relates to this particular part of the country and utility. As you can see all the way to the right-hand side of this table, these are all provided sources. A lot of utilities have their own data. And if they do, you can easily modify and put in your own data into the tool. So you are not by any way, shape, or form contained by the data that's provided within Create. From here, you pick a time period that you're interested in assessing to. Some folks only want to look 20 years in advance, 30 years in advance. Some might only want to look 5. And in this case, I picked 2060. And so we move forward. And then what you start to get is projected scenarios. So you can, again, see up here some data, a tutorial on historic conditions, and then the 3 different futures that we provide within the tool as it relates to climate data. So a hotter and drier future, a moderate, and then a warmer and wetter future. And so this is nice just to kind of give you a baseline of, or a foundation as to what you're looking at as you kind of move through the assessment. Gives you some explanation as to how to apply this data. And so in this case, when we look back here for this analysis, I chose the hotter and drier future for this utility. So you can see that located here. And so this is the climate projection data for a hotter and drier future in 2068 for this utility. Again, all provided sources. If you have other climate data that you want to look at, you can certainly do so. I can just kind of do the comparison between the two data, and the data comparison between the two forms of data between baseline and then the hotter and drier future for you, so you can see the difference. Also down here, you can export this data into an Excel spreadsheet if you so choose, because you want to have it for some other reason. So kind of nice features built kind of all along the way here for the tool. I'm going to stop at the end of this module to see if there's any questions, but so I'm just going to finish this one up here. And from here, what you're going to do is you're going to better define your threat. So again, a tip up here, we give some foundation for folks to start with down here in these drop-down boxes to better define their threat. In this case, we're looking at the baseline scenario, loss of wetlands, and what that means to this utility. And then here what the future might look like. I don't think in this case I changed the definition all that much, but you can get the concept of how you kind of move through the tool. And then onward to finishing up this module, and again, another summary report, which I won't download and show to you. I don't think that that's necessary, but let me stop there and see if there's any questions from folks. So let me see if there's anything in the chat. Okay. So from here, we move to the consequence and assets module. And again, a primer with a video. And this is really where you get into the nitty-gritty of the tool in the sense of looking at utility impact, equipment damage, source water impacts, environmental impacts, and then also in a bit I'll show you how we look at public health consequences. You can choose to monetize or not to monetize. When we worked with our utility group on this, which consisted of probably 20 different utilities across the U.S., one of the things that we heard over and over again was the fact that they wanted data or the results of this tool to be presented in dollars. So that's what we did. I will show you some of the available data within the tool, and then in other cases, users will have to be able to come up with dollar amounts as it relates to adaptive measures for anything that isn't sort of physically related to the utility. In this case, I chose not to consider public health consequences. However, you can look at a value of a statistical life or injury if you so choose to do so. I think that most users choose not to do that, but there are some folks that wanted to, so we added that component into this tool. One of the things that also we built into this tool was a streamlined approach for smaller utilities, so it just makes some decisions for users along the way. It doesn't make all of your decisions, but it does make the process a little easier, so you can go down the traditional, more robust analysis road, or in this case, you can go down a streamlined approach. And then in this case, and then here, what you do is you define your assets. I defined an aquifer as something that would be vulnerable to climate impact, and then kind of moving forward. I didn't do a real robust analysis here, so you could add in many assets, but one of the things that we stress to our users is you probably want to think about your threat that is most significant to the utility, and then your asset that's of most concern. Because if you start going down the road of defining every asset, the analysis can become very cumbersome. And defining one or two or three significant or priority assets are probably all you really need to think through the climate assessment. You can always go back and modify or conduct another assessment also. From there, you move into adaptation planning. And this is where you start to think about the adaptive measures that you either have at your utility, the existing adaptive measures, and you identify those. And then in the next step, what you do is you add in potential adaptive measures. And for each one of these adaptive measures, there are ranges of dollars that are provided for users. So if they don't know what it would cost to implement this, we give folks some of the data that either EPA has or AWWA has. There's many sources of data out there that provide information on the cost of implementation of these adaptive measures. And again, this is all documented in great detail in our CREATE methodology, so I'm not going to get into great detail on that, but it's a great starting place for folks. And then if you don't agree with the dollar amounts, or if you have your own dollar amounts, you can certainly change the dollar amounts. And from here, you start to build up different adaptation plans. So in this case, I have a plan called my current measures, and then in the next one, all potential measures. So you can start to do a cost comparison between the two different plans. And then again, another summary report, which I won't download this one, but I will move into what is the risk assessment module. Again, another primer here for folks, and a little bit of help here to kind of understand what you're looking at through the risk assessment process in CREATE, or in the risk assessment module of CREATE. So some good basic information on the outputs of the tool and the way the calculations are done. So in this case here, we're looking at the aquifer that I defined before. I would click here to run the analysis, which I've already done. And then you can kind of see, in this case, this probably isn't the best graphic of the outputs of the tool, but you can kind of see the overall results. In this case, for all potential measures, we just look at the aquifer. This is not going to change, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Let's see if this changes. Probably didn't pick the best file. But I think folks can get a basic understanding of the types of outputs that are provided within the tool, and how they help you or your customer base to make potential decisions about the adaptive measures that you'd actually want to put in place at the utility. One of the other things that we added into the tool was the likelihood of a scenario. There are a few folks that really wanted to better understand that. There's some great visuals within the tool and how likelihood is applied here. So again, some good basics on this portion of the tool and likelihood sensitivity. And from there, you actually, again, this is where you get your full on report with all the work that you've done throughout the tool. In this case, we have the all potential measures plan. You can download it. You get a nice report of everything that you did within the tool along with your cost comparisons. That will help folks to, whether it's to explain the need to other people at the utility or to the board of elected officials that would provide you with money for planning, whatever it might be. So again, some nice outputs for users of the tool. And so this is a basic example of the types of report that you would see as you walk through the assessment. So again, I'm not going to walk through this in any sort of great detail, but you can, all the data that you've put into the tool or that the tool is captured or provided to you is captured within that, that final report. And here you can see the final analysis progress bar, sort of where we started off when I started on the overview of Create. So that's a really high-level overview of the tool. I'm happy to talk about details if folks are interested or want to, but I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions.
Looks like we just got a question in the chat. If you'd like to go ahead with that one.
Sure. So this is from Michael, and it says, please forgive me if I mentioned this. Does EPA plan to update the climate projection data as new research is published? In a similar vein, are there plans to expand the time horizon further into the future? So the answer to the first question is yes. So all of our data is based on the 2014 U.S. Global Change Research Program report. The update to that report, I believe it's every 4 years, would happen in 2018, or that's what it would be released. Once that's released, we will start working towards updating that climate data. And then the second question was, do we plan to expand the future timeline? So we provide data for 2 different time periods, 2035 and 2060, but you can take that all the way out to 2100. At this point in time, we don't have any plans to expand those time frames. We heard back from our utility user group that that's what they wanted to look at, but you know, as we move forward over the next few years, we'll be making hopefully improvements to the tool as we plan to provide training and technical assistance across the U.S. If that's a theme that we hear over and over again, it's certainly something that we would consider. So we have a second question that just popped up here, one from Kathleen. What data do users have to input, and is it readily available to a small utility? I'm not sure that I understand the question. There's data within Create for historic as well as future projections, and the future projections are temperature, precipitation, storm intensity, and sea level rise. And we provide that to folks. However, if a utility has its own data, it can so choose to override the Create data. So I'm not sure if I'm answering that question, but I hope that I am. I don't know if there's any other questions. I don't see any in the chat, and I don't hear anybody.
Also, please feel free to take yourselves off mute and just ask questions directly if you do have them as well.
I don't know if I did a good job or if I just confused people. Hopefully it's the former.
No, not at all. And if there's anything you'd like to go into more detail on, please feel free to do so. And otherwise, everyone has my contact information. Or Kurt, you said you'd make yours available at the end of the presentation as well.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Let me pull that up for folks.
Not a problem. And would you prefer that people directly contact you, or would you prefer they go through me?
Oh, no, they can come directly to me. That's fine. And I can put this in the chat. I think there's a way to capture this from the chat, but I'm not sure. But this is my phone number, my email, and then the link at the bottom, which is really easy. If you go to Google and you type in CRWU, we're the first thing that pops up. So that'll get you to our home page, and then all the tools that I talked about earlier.
And if anyone is curious, I will be making this recording available to all of CSO. So if there's others in your program that you think this may be of interest to you, if you'd like it before it comes out, just let me know, and I'll be happy to send it to you as well. But if there aren't any other questions, and if you don't have anything else to add, that will conclude the webinar, I believe.
All right. Thank you all very much for your time. And please don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. I appreciate everybody taking the time today.
No, and when we appreciate your time as well. Thank you for putting this together and for presenting to us all.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
You as well. Thank you.